Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal for our post-match podcast for Arsenal versus West Brom. We smashed them. We're winning the league. Everything is turning around. We're the best team in the world, and we know it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share. We have so much to talk about. We did a whole instant match reaction on the game, and so we're not going to rehash all of it because we smashed them, and they were bad, and we were good. So that's pretty much all of it. But what we will talk about is taking one positive and one negative from this game that we can move on from. And so I'd love to hear in the chat box what you guys think about that. One positive and one negative about our 6-0 win against West Brom. Then, more importantly, what we need to talk about is the news that just broke not so long ago about Aubameyang / Lacazette potentially being involved in moves to Juventus, with the moving of the pieces of Cristiano Ronaldo going to Man City. The dominoes are finally falling, and this is probably what we were waiting on to happen to see if we could maybe move one of the strikers on. We'll also talk about Nketiah, another one of our strikers that is, to my knowledge, quite close to going to Crystal Palace, as we said before, which is great. 11.5 million, something around there, plus add-ons. Sweet. Move on. Just, yeah. Patty, take him. I love it. I'm into it. Then we'll talk about the Qatari takeover situation. Not necessarily do we think it's going to happen or not, but morally, is that something that aligns with the Arsenal way of doing things? We've always prided ourselves, or is that the word? Prided? Pride? Prided? We've always said we were Classenal. We were the classy team. We would never do, the oil takeover and all that kind of stuff. But I see a lot of Arsenal fans really down for it, and I feel like it would feel icky, but let's talk about it a little bit more. Do we just want to get back up to the top? And is there a way to get back up to the top without doing this? We know the way that Chelsea and Man City are spending money, that it's going to be really hard to compete at that top level. We've seen even Liverpool struggle to a certain extent. Is there a way that we can build the squad and build this club back up to where we want to be without having to go to this measure? Okay, there's about 40 of you guys watching on all platforms. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share. Also, make sure to, or not make sure, but consider becoming a member of the channel. FK will be here from the Latte Firm on Friday to chat with you guys, live Q&A just for members. So this would be a good time to join. It's less than $5 per month to become a member. Very, very affordable. I have George and Souls here with me today. Hey, guys.
Hello, hello.
Is Willian gone?
Yes.
Report just came out that
Willian's gone. His Corinthians, we've terminated his contract, or we're willing to pay his wages whilst he's there. So
all of them?
Yeah.
So what is this?
What is happening in this market? Please.
No, all right.
Wait.
So what they're doing is basically they want to try and get rid of Willian in a way that he'd be happy, because no one is covering 220 million or 220,000.
But neither are they. They're not covering it either.
No. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, no one's willing to cover that amount of wages. So what we're doing is what we did with Ozil, where we subsidized the wages and said, look, okay, you paid this portion of it, and we'll pay the rest, just to free him off the basically the team sheet and the squad sheet.
It's not. We're not paying all of it. There's a amount that you're paying. That's
the 50-50. Some people are saying we're paying everything, or we've terminated the contract, and some people are saying that we're paying portions of it. But we're majority paying for it.
Well, at least we don't have to see him anymore, I guess. I guess that's what we have to take. Horrendous deal. You guys, is that the worst signing in Arsenal history?
It has.
I mean, in terms of it's up there, ain't it?
It's up there. I don't know about worst one, because I think you'd have to take into account what we paid, and then profile wise, I think Arshavin or Gervinho are up there for me, even Santos. And it's quality versus, money. Did you get your value for buck? There's a lot of things there. I'd have to think about that a lot more. But Willian's up there. Willian's up there for one of the worst. I don't know. We'll probably talk about
I
it. What
think for
it
the
means in general.
reputation he had, I think from a reputational standpoint, from what he did at Chelsea to then come over to Arsenal and basically completely become a 180 player, I think it's just that's what makes me think he is the biggest flop. Whereas with other players that we've signed in the past, did they have that kind of reputation coming in?
You know, I honestly think the Mkhitaryan deal was worse, if I'm really being honest with you, because I felt
But
as
no one
though
wanted
the
him
role. Well,
though. Oh no, but no one wanted either.
yeah, no one wanted either. And like for me, like that role was a much more starting 11 edition where I felt like Willian, even if it was a builder where you thought he was good and everything, it was more of a supplementary role. Like I never thought we bought him for a starting 11 edition. So while bad and yes, on big wages, you know, I don't know if he was bought for the purpose of starting, where I think Mkhitaryan was, and he failed horrendously. So maybe my bet is that, but I'd have to really think about it. It's pretty much on the spot. It's between that and maybe some of our bad Santos deals and other ones, because those weren't great, were they?
Andre Santos was one of, he scared me. I have nightmares about that man still. You know,
Yeah,
it was just, like, you could just tell that he went out on a bender, you know, and would eat everything under the sun and probably reeked of booze, and then would come and try to play for Arsenal Football Club the next day. The guy, like, he was just horrendous, you know. But when I think about Willian, I think it's to be recency, because it also coincides with our decline as well, you know. So it's like it's more heavy because there's other bad things happening as well. I think there were a lot of questions around the deal anyway. Maybe more about the deal, less about the player, but there were some people that were like, what if he falls off the age cliff? I don't necessarily feel like it's an age cliff thing. I just think it's I didn't actually want to be here. You know, I think it's very clear that he wanted to be at Chelsea, and you know, coming to Arsenal, coming to London Colney, even though it's not that far, it's still within London. I just feel like it was just too different for him, you know. And I think some players that stay at clubs for a long time,
he only turned it down because Arsenal were willing to offer him more, not because we matched it or anything.
Well, also the year, right? Because I think there is a little bit of like hyperbole on the Willian, right? Because he's not on like the huge 200K a week. You know, his base is a lot lower, and it is based on performance add-ons. Like Aubameyang's not on 350, right? Like he's on 250.
He's on 250 base, yeah.
Plus perform, and Willian's on similar. Like I don't know the exact figures, but I think he's on something like 150 to be fair base, and then it probably extends higher with performance base. But regardless, I think when you look at some of these stuff, it is a tough one, because I feel like role in the squad is important, because while he is on really exorbitant wages, even for his role, I think we've had those before. Then you've got like your Kim Kallstroms, your Dennis Suarez, like you have them on cheap wages, but what did they do for anything? Like those were true wastes of money, you know, like they really didn't contribute much. So it's a tough one. I don't know. For me, I keep going back to Santos, if I'm really being honest with you. Maybe that's scarring, you know.
Suarez on loan was such a waste.
That's what I mean, like, you know, but he was only a loan, right? So like, I don't know if he counts. Like, do you count that as a transaction?
That's the thing. It's a loan. We're not like stuck with the player. We can just send it back. And it was half a season, so it wasn't really. Yeah. It was a bit of a hit because he was injured basically the entire time. But
it's crazy. But hey, if he's gone and we don't have to look at him anymore, I mean, that's fine. You know, it's kind of like a breakup. Like you just don't want to even see the person. You know, you block them, you delete them, because you don't want to see what they're doing. Have fun.
I know it's a bad move though, but Jess, don't you think it's encouraging that this evidently, like this business structure that we have at the club has acted fast to get rid of a mistake? Like, because
I mean, fell fast.
Yeah. I mean, look, every club is not going to get everything right. And, you know, like, I don't want people to mishear me. I didn't want him. But in profile, Willian made sense at the time in terms of a supplementary creative outlet that was on the cheap, that knew the league if we couldn't get a WAR. And it was kind of one of those deals where I was like, in profile, okay, I understand what you're doing. I don't like it. I don't like the player. But it wasn't just totally out of left field. And then it just hasn't worked. But then clubs do this, right? Like transfers don't always work. And so I think the biggest thing, though, that you can critique Arsenal is we hold on to things too long, whether that's selling, whether that's holding on to players and letting sentiment drive narrative. And so I think the one good thing is, look, he's gone, right? It's been a year. It hasn't worked. Cool. But I think us moving on so quick and even doing so with determination, it doesn't set great precedent.
That's where I have to disagree a little bit. Yes, we let him go, but we're still basically paying the wages. We're still taking a financial hit on him.
But don't you think that's authority too? Like in my mind, it's like, look, you're saying essentially it's really bad practice, but we've set this precedent, and you're basically saying, look, I don't want you in the squad period. You're bad for harmony, so I'm just willing to let you go permanently just to get you out. For me, it sends authority, at least in terms of those upstairs kind of that are in charge, because regardless, we weren't getting him gone. Like this idea that, fancifully, like somebody was going to pay that amount of wages is ridiculous. So, yeah, I think this was really good, to be honest.
What I want to say, the Canadian, exactly.
Yeah,
well, his name is George.
Bottom right.
Bottom right. Bottom right. Bottom left. But what I will say is that one thing that we have to, I think as a club, like just in general, I feel like our issue with bringing in experienced players sometimes is just we don't realize that, I feel like there's A players and B players. Me and some of my friends talk about this all the time. There's A players that take teams on their back. They're leaders. They can kind of galvanize a group. And then there's B players, ones that do well when the A players are doing what they're doing. And I think bringing in experienced players is not really beneficial to you if they're not A players, if you're in a downward spiral. I think Willian is a B player, beta. I think he does well when the team is doing well. I don't think he galvanizes. I don't think he leads. I think he's just been that guy. Like at Chelsea, you don't have to lead because there's always good players around. To the idea that he was going to come in and be able to be a good influence, a good experience around our young players. And we didn't have the structure for it. So I hope that we're moving away from that whole bringing in people's B-Tech players from good teams and expecting them to become alphas in ours. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. I just think that's he got to Arsenal and he was like, what is this? But whatever. Hopefully that's the end of that. But there's about 100 of you guys watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about the game a little bit. I asked the guys to kind of give one positive and one negative to take away from the game against West Brom. Obviously 6-0, how can there be any negatives? But I think when you add a little bit of context, maybe a little bit of the first 15 minutes where we didn't look that strong, maybe a couple of individual performances that left a little bit to be desired, we may be able to conjure up some negatives, not to beat down on the team, but just to be balanced and just kind of close this off, lock it off, and then move on to Man City. I'll start with you, Souls. What is your one negative that you have for the game against West Brom?
The difficulty with this one is because you're never going to see that backline in reality against some of the bigger teams. But one negative I will say is about the backline. And I know we kept a clean sheet, but if this was a better opposition, they would have trapped us into a corner when we tried to play out the back. And this isn't really a critique. It's just a bit more of what I've seen. We weren't as press resistant. Again, that's because we didn't play the players we normally would play. But it's difficult to really critique a team that's just beaten a team 6-0 regardless of the opposition. But that'd be my one negative is I don't think the backline was as comfortable when I really looked back at moments in the game as I thought they were. But that's down to personnel more than just if you had like a White there and Gabriel or even maybe Holding or something, that'd be a lot more. It'll flow a lot better, and we wouldn't be trapped if we were pressed as much. So that's it, really. That's the only negative I can really say.
George, what about you?
I mean, so for negative, I'd say, look, generally handling intensity, because I think regardless, like when you look at the first 15 minutes of the game, there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts. Like we know who was involved. We know that the build-up in the back didn't have our first choice. We know that Ramsdale was nervous starting minutes. Callum didn't help. Rob didn't help. Our players don't help our debutants. We know this. But I just think in general, the one thing that I don't think this team does is handling intensity, period. It didn't just have to be in those 15 minutes. It could be at any game state. I feel as though, which can maybe go to your point, Souls, of previous streams where we don't kind of come back when going behind. Yeah. That idea of handling intensity within a match is something that this team struggles with. And that's a mentality issue. I mean, you can point coaches towards the coach, but this team has struggled with that for almost 5 years plus. It hasn't just been a managerial thing. This has been a mentality issue within the squad that I think Arsenal teams have struggled with intensity. And so for me, that was the biggest negative that I took away, because I don't feel as though it was a one person at fault. Everyone looked panicky. like everyone. There wasn't just one person. Odegaard took a while to get going, get his foot on the ball. Like even in those 15 minutes, he wasn't offering the technical security. And like, I'm not slamming him for it. I'm just using it as an example of somebody who in the end had a great game, but in that 15-minute period struggled. And so it was just a mentality issue for me. So yeah, I really think intensity in general, if I can make that as a coaching theme, that this team just struggles with.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was them first 15 minutes. Like I just wrote first 15 minutes of just, not, it's one of two ways with this team for me. It's either the opposition comes at you and starts pressing you and we get scared, or we go into kind of like this practice-like build up, and then the team gets the ball and then comes down the other end and scores against us. And this time it was the intensity, quite similarly to what Brentford did. I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, what did Brentford do? Just really, really press them at the beginning of the game. And as George has already said, we just don't have our first choice back there. But at the same, token, we did have a better ball playing center back in Saliba. And I just think when you have this Chambers and the Holdings in your team, and you're just one injury away from them being your starters, and the drop off is so harsh, it does, especially when your whole game is built around building up from the back. It's scary. I know when Ben White and Gabriel get there, it's not going to be the same. We know that, but just watching those first 15 minutes and seeing how we could not deal with. So the whole point of being able to play out of the back is so that we can draw them out. And even if they're pressing us, we can be able to spring the other direction. And I just think our nervousness on the ball takes away from us being able to capitalize on those scenarios. And lets the other team get really confident. West Brom was on top of us those first 15 minutes. And I would say that's something that I would just let go if it's not a constant theme. And it kind of is, if we get pressed with certain people in the team, it's rough. But I'll just roll on with my positive. And my positive is really Bukayo Saka. It could be multiple players, but I just think seeing that he's fit and he's kind of starting off where he ended last season, I think he's going to get even better this season. He looked better. I don't know. It's just he even looked better to me. And I just feel we have such a gem on our hands, and he was really the catalyst for a lot of what we were doing with his really direct running. And he's a Premier League level type player, like somebody that really causes issues for the opposition, like to the point where they basically have to foul him. I think he has to be somebody who gets the majority of our penalties. He has to, him and Tierney with their progressive runs. So I just really when I watched the game again, I saw a lot of Saka again, and I was just like, the kid is just so good. The sky is the limit for him, What's your positive, Souls?
Similar, but I'm giving it more to the attacking threat that we caused. And again, I know it's West Brom's under 23s and we're expected to break them apart and really fight. But for me, it was like the way Odegaard was playing and that final through ball, which, don't get me wrong, I love ESR, by the way, but I feel like that's the one thing he lacks. And I always say they're the opposites of each other. Like ESR is a workhorse. He'll work hard. He'll drive that ball. He'll take the ball forward. Whereas with Odegaard, he's a bit more technical. He's a bit more flary. He's a bit more skillful. And that's why it's good to have them both, in my opinion, because it's a plan A, plan B kind of situation. And the way that, for me, it was like a lot of people had this doubt where Odegaard and Saka couldn't play well together. But for me, their link-up was brilliant. And I think, yes, Saka may have caused a lot of that. But for me, Odegaard's just vision to be able to find him, like the flick on that he did, for Saka's goal. That's the little things that we were missing. And this is where that control comes into the game and where we can start to dictate certain tempos and find different ways. It's unpredictable because usually we're very predictable in the way we pass and the way we're trying to break oppositions down. It feels like with an Odegaard and a Saka coming in, we can actually go down the middle rather than always using the flanks. And that's sort of, and I know, look, the reason why I bring this up, and I understand the opposition's weak, but it shows that we're looking at different ways of breaking teams down. And that's only a positive going forward. The more practice you get under your belt, especially in competitive situations, it only helps. And because teams know we're going to go wide to Tierney, we're going to go wide to, whoever's on the right, and that's the way we're going to play the ball in and cross the ball in. But with this dimension where we had Saka and Odegaard really playing in the middle and penetrating the middle, it makes people need to prepare differently for us, and that excited me a lot. And I'll say that's my positive.
What about you, George?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have a lot of time for Bukayo. Everyone knows, he's probably my favorite Arsenal player, in the team, period. And I do make the claim that he's world class for me. I think he's been world class for a while, to be honest with you. This kid, when you think about it, playing so many positions at such a high level, providing output in left wing back, left center mid, right wing. This guy just knows what to do on the pitch. I don't think he was fit the last couple of games, and what clearly came back today, or not today, but in this past game, was this idea that you could take the ball and become a reliable option between the lines. Now, when you add an Odegaard, I wasn't so high as maybe you, Souls, on the actual performance of Odegaard, more so the idea that this secondary person could hold on to the ball, I think made a huge difference. And, him and Bukayo became reliable again, whereas I felt even though ESR and Bukayo were in the 11, Bukayo wasn't fit, and so he wasn't the Bukayo that we know. And so really we only had one between-the-line, technical, secure player. And I think, though, my point I'm going to get to is my positive is Aubameyang. And the reason is when you have two or more between-the-line technical creators that are there, this guy thrives. And when you look at the movement, it was absolutely immense. A lot of people are telling me it was tap in, it was, him kind of just letting the chance fall to him. I completely disagree. You watch the first goal back, his instinct in running measure is to attack the box. He's got him behind the defender there, and he's anticipated the ball spilling before anybody's done it. He's done the same in the second goal. And in the third goal, it's just world-class Aubameyang. And I've had this argument kind of on Twitter, and I've angered many people, where I just don't believe this idea that this world-class finisher is dead or declining or physically not there. For me, I saw a lot of the returns of Aubameyang in that game. It wasn't just, this idea that he's not fit or whatnot. I think his movement was the sharpest I've seen in a while. Even at Chelsea, I did say I thought he looked sharp, something's brewing, and then he managed to sustain that movement for the entirety of a game. And for me, it was just another check mark, because I think a fit and firing Aubameyang, which I've always felt like is happening this season, is the difference between top four and not. This idea that you get an Aubameyang from last season or an Aubameyang from the season before really changes your calculus. So for me, my big plus is Aubameyang.
Mariba's going to Spurs, you guys.
Who?
Is that confirmed?
No, fuck, no. I'll get on the phone. I'll make sure that doesn't happen. That ain't happening.
Daniele Longo from Calcio Mercato.
Oh, he's up and down.
Advanced stage, you guys.
That ain't happening. No, that ain't happening. I don't care.
Nicola Shearer saying it too. Look, there's just, I know that this is a little bit off topic, but Edu has got to go. We have to be honest, he's missed out on quite a few really good opportunities, hasn't he? I'm
pissed if that happens. I am human. I am dragging Edu out of that helm myself. How do you I'm sorry, Iliax Mariba, I'm telling you, guaranteed this guy is the future. Him and Pedri are going to tear it up for Spain. I've seen enough of these two to understand that Mariba is the modern day sort of midfielder, box to box, who's got bags of goals in him. And yes, he's played half a season. He's not really had the full
sell one though, Soul. So my big thing is I'm with you on his potential, and I love him, but in profile, he's Willock in profile. Okay?
But he's better.
And what I mean, I don't know about that personally.
I'm telling you, he is better. Honestly, I'll back that conversation up.
I mean, it's subjective on talent ID, but what I'm saying is that profile we sold. And so what my point is, though, I don't think we're looking towards that type of profile in the midfield, because we're not going three-man midfield long-term. And my biggest question mark was selling a Joe Willock and versus an Alex Mariba even. If you were to get it, why would you sell your best three-man midfield if you weren't going towards that long-term? Because he is best as a free agent, right? Regardless of what we may think on talent ID.
He can play the party role. That's he can also do. He's been doing that.
a bit. Like, he can, right? Like, they're versatile players, but really he's best as a free 8. Like, he's best when you let him do
But that's
his
not when he.
business at the
That's not
top.
what he played last season, though. Last season he played in the 3-5-2, with next to De Jong playing as that Partey role, as a box to box, and that's where he actually got a lot of his success more than he did as a free 8.
Well, again, but also he had impact in the final third, and he was able to be. We don't play a 3-5-2, and we don't play a 3-man midfield. Like, I don't think we play that way. And so for me, I've never felt.
But he can do the Partey role within this 4-2-3, and that's what I'm trying to.
In the pivot, in a deep pivot?
Yeah, in a pivot, yeah, because he's done it. That's what I'm trying to say. He has done it.
I was not a fan of him in a pivot. Maybe that's subjective talent ID, but I see him very much in the Willock mold as a 3-man midfield. So I'm not terribly. I'm pissed that Spurs are getting a great player, but I'm not pissed necessarily because I don't think we're going that way in our squad. And when I look at the available options, and I'm sure we'll future cast about what we could do in the market, somebody like Aouar for me fixes a lot more holes and is probably a much better deal for the money than an Ilex Mariba, who I'm sure is going to command something like 15 million pounds, and like Aouar is going to command 20 million pounds. And I think as a deal, if you were to compare the two, Aouar is 10 times the better deal than Mariba.
The good thing is that there are concrete reports that Spurs are not interested in Aouar, but there's also reports that neither are we, so.
If they're going in for Mariba, they won't go in for Aouar. Like, that's,
exactly. I mean,
which is a mistake in my mind. Like, again, we can disagree maybe on the talent ID, but when you're looking at, like, he's a versatile, for me, he's best as a free 8. Like, I do see him in the Willock or the Pogba type profiles, if you really want to label them. But for me, Aouar has proven world-class levels as a free 8, as a pivot, as a left wing, and for similar prices. When you're looking at the players about what they've done,
but I'm just saying get both. I'm not even like I'm not even,
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I'd go get both. Why not?
I don't know. I think squad building is tough. But look, it's annoying that they're getting a great player. I think it's just annoying if we don't match it, right, Jess? Like, I think the big thing that maybe the anxiety is right now is we're seeing the market absolutely explode, and everyone's wondering and hoping, are we involved? Like, everybody is picking up scraps in this market. It's blown open, and we're wondering, is Arsenal's authority going to be in that hat? Are they looking around? Now, I absolutely think they are. I'm more of a positive person, though, in general, and not a lot of people agree with it. But
am I negative? Is that what you're saying, George? Am I negative?
I think you're realistic. I think
I border
as very positive. But I definitely think we do something. I think my point I'm trying to make is I think there's a lot of anxiety for Arsenal fans because there's clearly everyone else is doing moves, like everybody. And everything is blowing up. This market is crazy, and everyone's hoping we do something as a response, right? Because there's a lot of domino effects that are happening. I'm confident we do, but yeah, there's.
Well, let's talk about one of these dominoes that have dropped. So we've kind of spoken about the West Brom game. I think we can all say that was probably the best preseason match that we've had. Let's just be real. But we can close that and say that was ultimately a positive. Moving on to the weekend, we're going to be playing against Man City. We'll do more of a detailed preview tomorrow. But one of the dominoes that has fallen is Ronaldo to Man City. How badly are we hoping that his visa gets lost or delayed like Odegaard's did? The last thing I want to see is Ronaldo up against Marie after the way Lukaku put Marie in a spliff the other day. Like, the quality of the Premier League is going to be insane with kind of like the destruction of La Liga and Serie A. I think those two leagues being their top players leaving is going to make more top level players want to come to the Premier League. That means the competition.
There is speculation, and I don't know how bad it is, but he does have an injury, so he won't be ready for the weekend anyway.
Thank the Lord.
Guys,
he's got an arm injury, so they need to evaluate how that is before he's given the green light. Yeah,
I think. Well, didn't the Belgian coach Martinez confirmed that Kevin De Bruyne is out for the weekend, right?
Yeah. I mean, Kevin De Bruyne is going to be out, which is great. My biggest thing was I don't want to see Ronaldo until Well,
They
I don't want
also
to
have
say
to.
never.
They also have to be registered
tomorrow
24
by midday.
hours. So that'd be 12 o'clock, which will never be done.
Yeah.
So there's too many things stopping it from. I don't think he will play. Even if he does get registered, he hasn't trained.
Yeah.
I don't think Pep throws him in. Like, he's just not that kind of player.
So the thing about that was, the dominoes are falling, and they're falling. It's like the level of it is crazy. We've never seen this before. Because we were talking backstage, and I forgot to say Mbappe to Real Madrid.
I know.
And I forgot about that one. I don't know how I forgot. Messi to PSG, Mbappe to Real Madrid, Ronaldo to City. Haaland is definitely moving next summer, and it's going to be a madness wherever he goes.
Can I just do a list right now, just really quickly? Yeah. These are the people that have moved, okay? Like, we know have moved, okay? Messi, Ronaldo, Mbappe, Sancho, Lukaku, Grealish, Koundé, White, a bunch of other 50 deals. Like, guys, just look at the money. It's never happened before. Like, there hasn't been a window where this much money has influxed and outfluxed in the global market. Like, it's literally unprecedented. So I'm not going to sit here and even attempt to forecast things, because at this point, I never thought half this stuff was available. You typically get I think the biggest window in recorded history was the crossover of the Mbappe and Neymar deals. I mean, they weren't all in one, by the way, because Mbappe was a year and it got extended. But that was like roughly 400 million pounds worth of, fees, let's say, in general. You look at that list, it's like smashed the 400 million pounds in pieces. It's crazy to me. I think this market, we've never seen it. We smashed COVID, and I think we've just returned a new normal to what we look at fees now. I'll be honest with you. What has just happened has smashed things. A 30 million pound bid for, I know he's Ronaldo, but 30 million pounds for a 36-year-old, like, on stupid wages. Like, what is the implications of that? I think is what I'm trying to get at 5 years down the road. Like, you've just set the market precedent about what you're willing to pay for a freaking 36-year-old. I get it, he's the GOAT. I get he's done all these things, but regardless, this isn't the same Ronaldo.
But he's different. He's different, though. Like, he's not your normal 36-year-old.
I think it's opened the levels. Mbappe, in 1 year, somebody is willing to pay 180 million euros when in 6 months he can go for free. He can sign for free. What does that do 5 years down the line? Have we now just told that superstar talents that are even in the last year are still worth over 150 million pounds? Like, this is what I'm trying to process right now. Maybe I'm going way too far off, but when I'm seeing this, I'm actually flabbergasted. Like, my mind is blown at what this means in the future going forward. Like, does it matter? Does it matter that somebody's in the last year of their contract right now? Is what I'm getting at. Does it matter anymore?
I'm going to be honest, right? Like, for me, I'm not surprised when Messi moved to PSG that this all would happen, because you're talking about a lot of different egos who the spotlights. No, but a lot of spotlight has been taken away from them. Like, Ronaldo's like, oh my God, everyone's talking about Messi now. I need to make this move. And one thing that you need to realize is in 1 year, Messi's won an international trophy, which is one thing that, Ronaldo had over Messi. Then he's going to go do it in another league. Yes, it's League On, and it's not as prestigious as maybe other leagues, but he'll go win a trophy in another country, which is another thing that was held against him. I reckon Ronaldo's doing this as a ploy to go to the Premier League at the age of 36 and go and help them win their first Champions League, and I think that is the goal for him.
Well, I get that's the goal, but I don't know. I'm still like going over the deals. Like, for me, it makes 0 sense. Like, my mind's blown about what it would mean. Like, Harry Kane, for example, if we're having the topic about that now, it makes 0 sense. He's absolutely now worth 200 million pounds plus. Like, if Mbappe is worth that with literally 6 months left before he's free, those valuations make sense by Levy. Like, that's what the implications this has done right now. It has, I think, in my opinion, given money back to kind of buying clubs, where before we were screaming it was selling clubs. At the beginning of this window, COVID was still a factor, and we were totally saying you're at the mercy of selling clubs. Unfortunately, what I think today has done, where we've got Ronaldo confirmed, Mbappe confirmed, other deals basically confirmed with Koundé, it has now returned power to the buying club, and it freaks me out, because I think that it changes what you can do as a club with money and whatnot. So Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just going nuts. It's just, for me, the idea that Mbappe in 6 months is free, but you're going to spend 180 million euros to secure it, scares me for what the future would have. I mean, it also helps us because we've got a lot of great youngsters. So you're thinking, we've talked about this, Jess, but your Martinellis, your Sakas, people that are going now, what can we demand? Like Mbappe just told you what you're worth, even in the last year of your contract. And that, for me, hasn't happened in 15 years.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely crazy. And Malik, I'm not sure how to say it, but says, question, George, AK bottom right guy. Do you think there's a possibility that Juventus might target Abba or Laka as a result of this domino effect? And I think we do have some news on that there are some rumblings that like Juventus is talking to Arsenal about both of them, one of them, I don't know. But I mean, at this point, if I'm Juventus, I want Aubameyang. But if I'm Arsenal, take Lacazette. I'd prefer you take Laka. So Souls, where do you kind of stand on that? Like, obviously Icardi is involved in this. They want to see if they can also bring in Icardi.
He's
and
injured,
if they,
isn't he?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about his injury. I just know that they want to know if they can bring in Icardi, and then Aubameyang is also being looked at. Souls, for you, what is your temperature on this whole thing? Like Laka/Abba, which one do you think you'd most likely want to go? In this scenario.
I'd want Laka to go personally. I think the way that we've kind of built our team this summer and in the transfers that we've done, it just doesn't make sense to keep Laka at this moment in time. Oba just fits the build a little bit better. But obviously, we're going to be talking about the striker situation later on. So do stay tuned. We've got a shock reveal coming up. But on this topic, I think for Juventus, they are going to flirt with both and they're going to try and see what Arsenal are willing to do because you've got to understand there's obviously for most Premier League clubs, there's about a week left. Obviously, the window closes at the end of the month. And a lot of the Premier League clubs aren't going to want to do business further than that. I believe in the European market, it finishes second week of September or something like that. I know they tend to close theirs a little bit later than us. So, obviously they know that this is their window of opportunity. And once that sort of window closes for us, we are no longer going to do business because we can't replace these players unless we've already bought them in. So they're just going to look to see which one are we willing to move. And for me, Aubameyang seems to be a certain stay from Arteta's sort of press conferences in terms of statements from the club. He seems to be, and also don't forget, we've not taken the captaincy away from him. We've not done anything to suggest he's the one to go, and he's still got a little bit longer on his contract than Lacazette, so he'll be the more accessible player. And Juventus are going to be desperate to replace Ronaldo. It pretty much does seem to be a done deal because Ronaldo's basically handed his transfer request in and said, "Look, I'm off to City, so you do what you need to do." And So that's kind of where it stands, and I think it's just whatever they can get done. That's why they're looking at Icardi because of the whole PSG situation and then bringing Messi in. Obviously, the Mbappe thing seems to be an imminent deal that's pretty much going to be announced tomorrow. So they're going to look at Icardi just to see if he's available, and because it is a panic buy at this point, and they're going to be willing to take whatever they can. So I think I'd want Lacazette to go, and I feel like he'll be sort of the first one on offer, but it won't be Aubameyang.
Yeah, I think that's more the likely that's what we really want. If I'm Juventus, I want Aubameyang, but George, go ahead. Do you have a bombshell that you'd like to drop? I need a one of those like things that have the noises. Yeah, so I can have like a whoosh and a bomb and a tweet, that kind of stuff. But George was telling us backstage what he is predicting for what's going to happen based on kind of like a little bit of the movement. We also know
late
that
night fantasy. That's all I'm going to say.
Not a late night fantasy. Oh my goodness! But even Nketiah looks like he's on his way out. So if we can get rid of one more striker, then we should be able to make a move. What do you think, George?
So call it what you want, but I'm just getting my transfer mystical powers, and what I'm thinking of is the domino effect of Lacazette basically leaving to go to Juventus, which I think is clear. Like, for one thing, Oba, I can guarantee, isn't leaving because, Mikel Arteta has said so. And even that was under the pretense that City were interested. And so for me, they have unlimited financial powers. So if he's guaranteeing that, nothing like that has happened. So for me, Oba definitely doesn't go regardless. But Laka absolutely could go. And Lacazette, I've always said Juventus would absolutely really like that move tactically and stuff. So yeah, if he does to go, that leaves now Lacazette, that leaves Nketiah gone, and that leaves Willian confirmed gone. That absolutely guarantees Arsenal getting a final third player. And who have I said that really needs to make sense with Odegaard, particularly coming in? He needs a physical presence. Yeah, Curran, who is in the chat, knows me well. I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a huge possibility for Arsenal Football Club. And I don't know why. I get this, but it's just, we've had links in the past. They seem to be targeting Neil Maupay for some reason, who absolutely is the tip of an arrow and wouldn't be replacing Richarlison. He would be replacing a number 9 in that squad. And for me, we've had interest in the past. He fits our target of this transfer window, and U24 English leader, knows the league, makes sense for an Odegaard in terms of what type of attacking midfielder we have, right? He allows him to kind of be the bully in the center. It absolutely makes sense, but it needs like Lacazette to go. Of course, that makes sense. But I do think there's a big possibility that this domino effect of Ronaldo totally opens that door. So that's something that I would absolutely keep an eye on. So yeah, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is something that I have a feeling about.
I've got a rant now, yeah, because fam, are these man mad? How is it a downstep to go from Everton to Arsenal? I'm sorry, they finished below us. Logic in it, fam. They finished below us. So how is he making a step down?
Because that's just the default.
No.
Any club that you go to is any club that you're at that's not Arsenal is a step up. Like Everton is, yeah, come on.
But they're in the mud, fam. I'm sorry, they're in the mud.
But this is how like these domino effects work. So like I never thought in my wildest dreams that Ronaldo would leave, Juventus. And then now they're absolutely looking for a striker. Now, like if Lacazette stays, then of course this is ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's totally predicated on the guarantee that Lacazette's leaving. That's how I think we would move in the market in terms of the opening. But I think if Lacazette stays, then you basically go the Awar route and you're facilitating an off-the-ball center forward runner, right? You're recruiting technicians, and that's the route that you go for. But again, I think this is what these dominoes open. And the one thing I'll say, this window is unprecedented. And this is just one of my weird feelings that doesn't make any sense. But it absolutely could happen just based on what's happened in the last 2 kind of days in the window. I think crazy moves have happened that people haven't really thought that make no logical sense. So for me, I'm just looking tactically how the moves we've made make sense. And we need a springboard. We need a reference and attack. To me, this makes all kinds of sense for everyone involved, by the way. I mean, Everton, they have financial fair play issues. They're looking to get rid of players. They're looking at Neil Maupay. Why are you doing that if you're not getting rid of somebody with FFP issues? So somebody's leaving Everton.
But you know the other side of why I do think someone like a DCL or even a Vlahovic is a possibility is because then they can't. I'm sorry, I don't think they're going to allow their biggest signing financially. I'm talking to be Ben White because they know the fan. But I mean, if they make a sensible signing, now let's say if we got Cristiano Ronaldo for 25 million, then it's a bit different situation.
Sensible signing.
do you know what I mean? But they can't have Ben White being the most expensive player of the season when there's a gaping hole in that striker situation. So I do think at least another 60, maybe 70 million pound player, which will get DCL over the line, in my opinion, if they are looking to replace him, and it looks like they are. So I just hope they do the sensible thing and don't go and get a stupid striker. That's
also
all
Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Ramsdale are besties, so hopefully that would be nice. That stuff does make a big difference.
There's a lot of yays in my corner. Just before people start shooting me down, I'm putting my hands up. Like it needs.
I love DCL in this team, man. The guy would bag golden boot winner. I'm not even joking.
We need something. Like I think we can all agree that there are at least 3 big holes like in our squad. I think we have a traffic jam up front, obviously. So that's more of like, we don't have people, we have a traffic jam. None of it really fits, doesn't really make sense at the moment. But in the midfield, we have problems, and right back, we have huge problems. So I'm hoping from now until the end of the window, we're able to fix 2 of those. I can't see us just doing right back. That's not good enough. So we'll definitely see what happens. I guess my temperature on the whole thing is that, I prefer to see Aubameyang stay and for us to bring in another striker. I think that would be nice. But, it's just a weird one because I think Juventus did want Lacazette at one point and it fell through or something. Like they were interested in him. Yeah, so we'll definitely see what happens. What I am happy about is knowing that Eddie is on his way out, not because I don't like him or anything like that, but there were a lot of people saying like that, taking this amount of money is not good enough, and my whole thing is like, we can negotiate, but the reality is that we've let his contract situation get to a point where our negotiation leverage is quite low. So being able to at least get over 10 million for Eddie and Ketia and without being able to, knowing that the alternative is getting nothing, I think it's good business for us. And we move forward, you open up space for Balogun, it becomes less congested up front, it becomes more clear, and he gets what he wants. So I'm very happy about that. If that's Willock and Nketiah, 2 of our young players, in both of those together is about 35 million. I can't really complain because we haven't handled the contract situations correctly. We haven't bedded them in correctly. They slipped through the cracks under Raul's reign, in my opinion. So I think that's good business. George, did you want to say something?
Well, it's very likely that we've got a sell-on clause too. Like this is the absolute staple of Richard Garlick's. When you're looking at it, 11.5 plus add-ons, that gets you maybe 13, 14 million pounds plus a sell-on clause, which he will get because, he will move in the future. For me, I look at that deal, it's a 15 million plus pound deal. That's how I look at it. And that achieved my mark of even authority, in my opinion, because I felt that we had an evaluation and it's a compromise. And I'm happy with that because I think even Willock at 25 million plus his sell-on clause, that in the fullness of time will be a 30 million plus pound deal. Even if he moves for peanuts, you're going to get 5 million pounds at the very least for some of these kids at any low release or sell-on clause. So for me, I'm just happy that we've been smarter. Like, I think that's very much smart business from us, introducing sell-on clauses, which I don't think we've done in the past. Like, it's very much a Richard Garlick MO, right? Like, we have not had sell-on clauses for our players, which I don't know why. Like, these are young English talents. They're going to move. They're going to be desirable, and they're good enough to stay in the Premier League. So, yeah, I am just to summarize, like, I'm happy with the deal. And I know I said before I wouldn't accept 10, but I don't think this deal is 10. I think it's 15 million plus pounds. So I achieved my little mindset of not giving too much authority away in the market for me, but compromising and getting a sell. And now that that's done, that's Willian confirmed and him out with Torreira out. Like, in the last 2 days, we've moved 3 players, so it is cause for optimism.
See, Walder, I want to know who these other options are that you're thinking of for the striker position.
I know what they are. They're going to be Isaac, Vlahovic, them kind of players. Over
let's see Walder answer. Let's see what maybe he has something different. You never know.
Maybe Mbappe, Cristiano Ronaldo, so
there's, and that I saw it, Hudson Edward in the chat, and you guys, honestly, I don't think he's that much better than what we have. Crystal Palace and Brighton were choosing between Eddie and Nketiah in him, and Crystal Palace chose Nketiah. And I know that maybe Hudson Edward costs a little bit more, but if he was that much better, I'm pretty sure Crystal Palace or Brighton would have pulled the trigger. They both decided to go in different directions, and I think maybe there's some Scottish Premier League tax on him. Maybe it's just he does really well in that league. He's not much better than Eddie and Balogun, in my opinion. And if we're going to bring in another striker, it needs to be a big name, not a big name, but somebody who's going to make big impact. And it's hard to see who that's going to be, but there's also somebody else that hasn't, I don't think they've signed their contract yet, is Lautaro Martinez. Do you think that that's still swimming around or no? Because he hasn't signed yet.
He's not a profile that I think makes any kind of sense, to be honest with you. I mean, if you're going to go for the false 9 person, and that's what you prefer, there's plenty of better options, like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, for example, I think is a very similar valuation to that we know what's going to happen in the league. And for me, fits our squad 10 times better than a Lautaro Martinez does for me. I still think he's in that weird hybrid. I know people tell me that he has played as a 9 for Argentina, so he can lead the line. I don't necessarily agree, having watched him. I think he's much more a second striker, somebody that works best off of somebody else. We have one of those hybrids. His name's Lacazette, and he hasn't really done great for us. And he's done well, but he hasn't worked out to the same degree, and I don't think that's what we want moving forward. So I think if we were to go with that false 9, there's much better physical prospects that fit our team, in my opinion. Your Isaacs, your even Vlahovic, your Dominic Calvert-Lewins. I would much prefer that type to play the false 9 role than somebody that's a little bit smaller and not quite, an off the ball runner at that sense. But I don't like the false 9 narrative, so I'm just being devil's advocate here about what I would do if I had to do it, gun to my head.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely see what happens. It's interesting because when these dominoes started to fall, I was like, I hope we're involved, just because I'm bored now. It's like we're in the transfer window. You want to be involved the entire time, and we're just not at the moment. We're kind of like selling players or whatever, removing them or moving them on or whatever. So we'll see what happens. But let's also talk about, I think the last thing that I wanted to talk about was the whole Qatari thing that's roaming around. People are talking about, is it legit? Is it not? And I don't know if it's legitimate or not. I really don't know if Qatari is like 100% trying to acquire Arsenal or whatever. What I do know is that there's a lot of debate on whether or not morally this is the direction in which they want the club to go in. A lot of fans are not interested. And then there's another section of the fan base that's like, just get the money in because I'm ready to do something else. And it's difficult because I just feel like it's going to be really difficult for us to compete at the highest level with the Cronkies involved in the club. And the way that Man City and Chelsea are spending money, I think it's getting further and further away. But Souls, for you, like despite, or without the whole, like, is it likely to happen or is it likely to not? Because we've already kind of discussed that the Cronkies have to be willing to sell and, they would have to really put some money on the table. But with our history being classinal, the classy ones, we do things the right way. Would this disappoint you a little bit if we went in this direction, oil money per se?
We've already sold our soul. If you truly look at it, we had percentage of our fans owning this club, and that's already gone. So the reality is, look, no billionaire gets into that sort of money and into that sort of power without doing something immoral. So for me, that the whole notion of selling your soul or selling this, unless you're backing a fan-owned club, you can't talk about morals. I'm sorry, I know there's levels to it, and I understand that. Just because someone's dirty laundry hasn't been aired for people to see doesn't make what they've done right. There's so many things, even in our day-to-day, that we buy that are immorally wrong to do, in terms of exploitation of people, in terms of just not paying people. Like, look at the football tops we buy. I know this is going to sound harsh, but we buy football tops that have been probably made in sweatshops. I'm sorry, but like, let's start to look at it deeper. And we don't really second guess that. We don't really look at the moral side of that. But at the end of the day, there are people who have exploited people to get to where they need to, where they want to be financially. And for me, like, talking about morals, and when you're that rich and powerful, there's always things you've done that quite don't sit right with people. The Cronkies had a hunting channel, so there's animal right, things there as well. As much as people want to talk about human right violations, they've done animal right violations there. So ultimately, you look at even the Cronkies' wife having Walmart. There's a lot of things that Walmart have done to exploit a lot of their ventures and being able to be where they are. And look, these are all allegations. Obviously, I'm not saying that what I'm saying are facts, because it's impossible to prove until someone actually goes and does the legal work. So for me, it's like when people say we're selling our soul, we've got a billionaire owner. And also, don't forget, there was a large portion of the fan base who were willing to let Usmanov take over rather than the Cronkies to get 100%. And guess where Usmanov's money comes from? Oil. So at the end of the day, we're not selling our soul. Ultimately, look, selling your soul will always happen when once we got 100% ownership in the Cronkies. Because for me, our fan base had ownership, and we did have a leverage within the club. And I'm not saying it was a huge portion, but that was there. So for me, it's like, do we have our class? Do we have where we are? We used to be, a different. That's changed. I don't think once we left Highbury, the soul of Arsenal, we left that as well. We left that back at Highbury, in my opinion. So I can't sit here and say we're selling our soul because of moral situations. Yes, there's levels to that. But I'm sorry, I can't sit here and say that, I'd rather keep the Cronkies because I don't want to know. You're literally, all you're doing is one immoral person for another immoral person. What they do at the end of the day, I don't know. We can sit there, talk about human rights violations. I can't do anything about that. All I can do is support my club and want them to do the best. And I have to look at it that way. I don't care about because I care about what these people have done, but I can't change that. But what they can do for me is change my club and make it more competitive. And that's what I think they'll do. They'll come in and I think they'll bring a better structure in. And I think they have got a better business model to bring in and be able to come into Arsenal and do differently. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. We have a super chat here from Tahir. Tahir says, Jess, you guys fired people during the pandemic. Classy. I mean, no, I think
reality.
It's more, people were basically saying like the Cronkies should, as a business person on their side, if somebody's not actually doing the job that they're being paid to do, they're probably not going to continue to pay them, and that's how I kind of saw it. I thought it was an unfortunate situation caused by the pandemic, but the people that were let go did jobs that were not really being done at that time because the stadium was not open. So yeah, you can look at it as like not classy. They didn't go the mile to keep those people in their jobs. But from a business standpoint, if you own the club and you are drowning because of the pandemic, you're not going to pay people that cannot do their job because the job can't be done. So I think people really held on to the firing people during the pandemic. I think what was worse was asking the players to take a pay cut. I think that was more bad than the people that were fired.
No. It's the fact they asked them to take a pay cut to save jobs, but then they lost their jobs anyway. So for me, that is,
it's more the pay cut than that to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's the reality. I see it even in my everyday business. I mean, you can spin it as PR and everything, but every club made these cuts, whether it was public or not. I don't think we did a great job in media relations, but it was the reality of the pandemic, and anybody kidding themselves otherwise that no club made cuts or anything is a little bit ridiculous, to be honest. There were businesses and people lost their lives towards this. It was once in a lifetime. I think it's disingenuous to blame owners on the situation of kind of a once in a lifetime pandemic.
And also like the whole Chelsea did this, like Chelsea, Abramovich and the Cronkies are not the same. They're not required to run their businesses in the same way. You don't know how much money they have, what the books look like. So, I think it's a tough one. I really, really do. I don't think that that's the difference between Arsenal being classy or not. I think there are other things that you can look at. That for me is not really something that I can because I'm not behind the scenes looking and seeing how they're running their business.
I don't even know Chelsea well enough to really comment. So I don't know, maybe to circle back, because I'm totally on the other side and spectrum souls with this whole idea on owners. And so personally, look, I understand that I don't think many fans understand that the jeopardy that you get with a billionaire venture kind of capitalist owner, the idea that there's meritocracy, integrity, morals, that doesn't align with capitalist kind of innate desire or their addiction to profit. I'm fully absolutely aware that, billionaire owners, you basically trade one corruption towards another. And while for me, I do have personal levels of corruption that I'm willing to accept, I really do think there is a certain moral ground that I'm not willing to accept with Qatari owners, and I don't like that. For me, my biggest argument on it, though, is much more about the process of winning, the hollowness of what I feel a trophy would give me in that sense. I don't feel like it's earned. I don't feel as though that's something I would be willing to accept if I was owner or a fan of this club, that I really don't think just giving me money to then buy the best players means that I've really won, in my opinion. I think the process to getting to your win is much more important than the actual win for me. How you get there and that legacy of it is a lot more important to me than the securing of those trophies ultimately. And I think the biggest reason that, really I've been proud of Arsenal and why I grew up supporting Arsenal is our ethos. That for me is a big part of why I am a fan of Arsenal and why I'm not a fan of others who do have this model of venture capitalism. And look, I don't think it's like right or wrong. I'm not saying that. It's just what I personally am comfortable with is the process of winning. And I enjoy that struggle. I enjoy that earning the stripe a lot more than just getting it and it could be right or wrong, but I would not sell, and I do view it as selling your soul to somebody just to gain trophies. And I think it's a bigger commentary on what you might be willing to accept as a fan. I don't think that means I'm accepting mediocrity. It's just I would rather accept a proper process that I can defend at the end of the day rather than just buying a trophy or telling me you're going to gain another 5 trophies in your win column. I feel, though, as a club, we've won. And the process of how we've won has been very regimented throughout the years. I'm not comfortable switching that to the other side.
If you look at what Chelsea have done, net spend, they've actually got a very low net spend. And I know people don't like using the word net spend and everything like that, but you don't have to buy it. It just has to be run properly. And if you look at Chelsea's window this season,
factually, they changed the entire global market. And since 2003, they've been the most successful club by absolutely spending the most too.
Yes, but they've also made that money back as well. Not by selling players. Look at their net spend. They've only got a 2.5 million net spend before Conte comes in.
But that's this window, Souls. Like in reality, when you do look at it, their
outgoings are a lot higher in
No, but
in
Souls, that's not true. Even there's a Sky graphic that absolutely shows in the time that Arsene Wenger that's been involved, he's the only one that generated a £20 million profit, where every single other oil club had spent on average over £200 million. Maybe in your window here, they have done a good job about negating that spend, but it's factually not true. They've 100% spent more than most people in the league, arguably than City, and and that's a way of winning. And I'm not really hammering that, but it's absolutely a different way of winning towards maybe somebody else that would not balance the books like that. I don't agree.
This season we've overspent 130 million and not made anything on that. So in that reality, we should be competing then.
That's my point, though. It's in the short term. They absolutely, over 5 to 6 years, their model, while they maybe have net spended and have sold well this window, have not done so in the past windows. On average, since, again, 2003, they absolutely haven't had an equal net spend. That's not true. They've totally spent a lot more than the market.
But that's what they're built towards now, though. But their business is a lot better run than what Arsenal will be.
But now, Souls, it took a decade of them pumping in hundreds of millions of pounds to get to the point where they also have been able to take advantage of modern football culture. Like, the only reason that they've been able to do that now is through their loan system about selling their academy players for £30 million in an inflated market. That's the only reason that they've been able to match up their net spend.
That's what a good business does, exploits the market that they're currently in.
So if they're short term, though, Souls, they haven't done that over 10 years.
But they've done that throughout their history of Roman coming in.
That's not true. They haven't been able
to put to sell. We've actually been the worst in terms of selling players. We have not made a profit on nearly most of our signings. So we're not a really well spent. We're not really a well.
We aren't, but you can't say that, Souls, that Chelsea has had an equal net spend and that they have sold the equal amount that they've spent.
But they've actually not spent as much as people make it out to be either.
They have. There's no way. They have, mate. They totally have.
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah. We're not going to get anywhere with that one, are we? Good debate, you guys. But yeah, we got some super chats here. Let's move on from it. Tahir says, you fired Gunnersaurus and the scouts who worked for you for decades. I feel like you're not realistic if you think your club is classy, your fans are, but not the club. And I don't think I ever said that we were. I said that what we were built on and what we are known for is being classy and classical. And I think I also agreed that there are things that we've done in the past and as of recent as well that would not be filed in the classy category. I'm just saying that you specifically picked out something that I feel like is more, and using Chelsea as an example against us, for me, is a little bit like, we know that they do everything different and you don't know what the Cronkies are like in their business. We don't know how much they were bleeding. We're not looking at we're not actually looking at the books. But when you say fired Gunnersaurus and the scouts and all of that, yeah, but then we replaced them with different scouts. So you could say that we just went in a different direction. So I would say that, you know, a lot of it's difficult. I'm not saying that everything that we've done is right, but some of the examples that you're picking out are more what the media has spun in order to make Arsenal look worse in that period of time was also synonymous with the Ozil stuff as well. So at that point, the media was picking up on any little thing, saying that we fired the scouts, but not coming back and saying that in a couple of months we hired different scouts is just saying is spinning a different story.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate timing. It was always the direction that Arsenal wanted to go in, was to because the way that obviously the pandemic kind of planned out, we no longer wanted scouts in areas because firstly they couldn't actually go to the stadiums and watch these players. So we started to implement more of a video analyst and kind of bringing in, and this is what Pep's done for a very, very long time. And I think Arteta is someone who's trying to bring that into Arsenal, where we do a lot more video related analysis and stat work and more data performance than, because we weren't able to send these guys out. So having 55 scouts who roughly probably make anywhere from 60 to 100k salaries and then have their business expenses paid for as well is a huge cost on any business. So for them not to be able to work and for us to not have a long-term plan with them anyway, it just makes sense to let them go.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I definitely don't think we're the club of old, but some of these examples are more based around the media making it seem worse and taking certain things out of it to make us look worse than we really do. We're in the midst of a pandemic, and a lot of people made decisions based on business that didn't necessarily look good in the public eye. And so, yeah. But again, I'm not saying that we are like purely classy, if that makes sense. George, did you want to say something, or are you good?
Well, yeah, because I mean, I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with the idea that the net spend has been equal, because just even looking online, like over the past 10 years, City's net spend right now, and I'm not slamming the process, but it is 860 million pounds. The next second is Manchester United at 814 million pounds, and third is Chelsea with 410 million pounds. And we are nowhere near in the top 10 list. And so I'm just uncomfortable with saying that they're equal. And in fact, two seasons ago, their net spend was just 200 million pounds because they didn't make any sales. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's a different way of doing business. But the idea that they earn back,
yeah, but George, they had a transfer ban and they used 2 windows worth of money in one. They had the sale of Eden Hazard, which was about 80 million or something. So even then,
that's still, I mean, that still is a much larger spend, and it's not equal to the net spend that what.
Yeah, but that's an average of 125 if you look at it per 2 seasons, and then one of those seasons wouldn't have really. It would have been a lot of that would have been covered with the Hazard sale. So, and even if you look at it, okay, last 5 seasons they've got a net spend of 132 million. So obviously initially you have to make a big investment, which is what the Cronkies are currently doing, but we'll see. But they can't sell. They've never been able to really sell for profit since they've come in, even at a 50% or 50 whatever percent it was. So my point is that Roman at least has now bought in a structure which, okay, yes, they're not always equal. It's never going to be literally equal because there's other factors that bring you money in terms of revenue, shirt sales, and obviously sponsorship deals as well. But when you think about it, in the last 5 seasons, to have 130 something million to win Champions Leagues with that, to be competitive with most of those seasons, is something I'd rather have than not have a net spend and not compete at all and actually go into a decline rather than actually progress.
Nashville, which I hear, right? But like, I hear that. It's just, I think my point was there's a major influx of money to get them to that stage of them doing it. And it doesn't negate them not doing good business, which they absolutely have. That doesn't mean that we've been smart, but the level of investment has absolutely took something that was unseen in the league historically. And it started the pinnacle of that. And that initial investment was this ideology of buying your way to the top, which I don't mind. Like, that's your way of winning. But it gets to a point where it can be sustainable, then excellent. But I didn't.
But then, so you disagree with this window then, because we've actually spent quite a lot of money.
Sorry?
So do you disagree with how we handled this? Not in terms of signings, but just how much money we've spent this season.
No, I don't mind. I don't mind us doing it, but I'm not looking at a short term as right or wrong about how we got there, because in general, our business hasn't been there. We have to get to a level of spending competitively with other people. That's the landscape that the modern football is built on. But in my opinion, I think it's very disingenuous to say that Chelsea built their success model, which I'm not saying is right or wrong. It's a different way of doing it, was based on equal measure spending and equal measure selling. I think that's something you can maybe level at a Liverpool, absolutely, over the last 10 years. You can't do that for Chelsea. And I'm not saying that that's right or that's wrong, but I don't think you can discredit the initial expenditure that absolutely got to them to the point to be sustainable in that way, to be able to do that, which they did get lucky.
Even when Arsenal had their success in the hybrid days as well, we were one of the highest spenders, and that's just how success has always been in football. It's typically the people who spend more are the ones who are more successful. That's just typically how the trend has been.
We definitely sold off. We used the money that we sold for Anelka to pay for a training center, and then we went and we got Henri with leftover cash. Like, we absolutely were a business that had consistently, not even over just 5 or 6 years, but over like 20 years, operated on what we earned and what we went in. I think it's disingenuous to say that Chelsea operated on a similar model. I don't think that's true. They absolutely had huge injections that got them to a point to be able to do this. And I think it's smart. Like, you're not going to get a billionaire that's constantly going to pump in money. Roman was never going to do that, but he did do an obscene amount at the beginning to get them to a level of proper business. Now, it doesn't negate that they've got good people in charge. It doesn't negate that they've got Marina, who's done excellently about selling. That's not my point. I think the big thing that I'm trying to make is there was an initial 5 to 10 year period where they sold absolutely obscene amounts of money into the club, which is cool. It's fine. It's just not something that I align with in terms of success, because it definitely bought them success. It definitely bought them trophies. And for me, I
but
felt
that's
the
any
process,
business, though. You have to initially make an investment to be able to make a return. That's just a way, especially a very successful business model. Initially, you do pump in a lot of money before you can really see that return on investment. And now they're reaping the rewards of that with the success they've had in terms of commercially, in terms of domestically as well. And when you look at their sort of last 5 years, yes, last 10 years, it has been quite a lot higher in terms of, I think it was 400 million or something. But in the last 5 years, it's been 132 net. So at the end of the day, they are now not needing to spend as much, and they'll recoup that back. And that's what a big, good business model is. And look, we're talking about Mark Gui going, a player who hasn't played a single Premier League minute for, what was it, 20 million? And we're struggling to sell a player who has Premier League minutes for 10 million. I'm sorry, that's good business. And yes, it takes a while to get there, but I just don't see the Cronkies putting those people in place. That's just what I'm trying to get at. And I feel like, I'm not saying that the Qataris have to come in. I just want new owners who are more competent. And these Qataris, in my opinion, probably know a little bit more about how to make this football model really kick on. And they can make it a self-sustaining model if they really wanted to.
But what's your level then, B? Because you get to a point where, look, I'm happy that we've spent 130 million pounds, because it's been long overdue that we get investment, and we absolutely have gotten. I'm not against the idea of investment. To me, I have a certain line about what level I'm willing to invest, because it gets to a point for me where that process gets removed, and you
but when you have smart people in place, it doesn't. That think about it. If we had Chelsea's board, right, with 130, let's give them 130 million. Do you not think that Maria or whoever else is in charge would have done better than Edu and Arteta, or even just Edu?
No, I think so. But I mean, it's also perception. It's where the clubs are at right now. And I do think that 130 million is not the same as maybe what it was 10 years ago. And what they did to get to that point are not equal. 130 pounds in this market and inflation about what people are spending is very, very different to what they did when they first got into the Premier League. And
but even if you look at Arsenal currently, I do believe that 130 million with like the likes of Maria and whoever else is on that board would have spent the money the way the fans were thinking, or more aligned with the Basumas. No, I do think they would have got Basumas and Awas in if they had to be smarter with it, because that's what they've been doing.
I need to read these super chats, and yeah. I mean, I wanted to have the debate, but I think it could go on forever. You know what I mean? I get that. But I do think we've heard both sides, and that's kind of what we wanted to do. Nashville Gunner says there's a difference between Walmart exploitation than to Qatar slave labor. I'm not willing to cross that line. And that's a personal thing. I think Tahir did something else too. Tahir sent in a super chat as well saying, so if Roman was your owner, you wouldn't support Arsenal. And I guess that's a question maybe for you, George, because if Roman was the owner of Arsenal, what would you do?
No, I wouldn't. I would stop supporting the club because I felt it crossed a line that I don't agree with in terms of ethic, ethos. It's not something I align with. I would then choose a club that I felt was doing things the right way. And for me, that right way is proper management, spending what you earn, and making sure that you're not buying that level of success. I absolutely would. I would stop supporting the club if we received an owner like that. But that's just my level of what I'm comfortable with, And so, yeah.
I guess like it just depends on how you associate your love with the club. Like what are the reasonings why you love the club? And for me, it was a little bit different. Some of it was about the winning. It was about I love the players. I love the vibes. Like I love that I was looking at players that look like me. I was more attached to that. The classy part is not really something that it's not as high on my list as the winning feeling and like watching our team be really, really successful with players that I understood. That was more my thing. I did like the idea that we had a mix of a British core and players from other places. I thought that was more what I associated. I knew that we had the Classical thing, but if Roman owned Arsenal, I cannot see myself just not want. I can't see myself just giving it up, because the classy part was a lot lower on my list than the winning part. I literally started watching in 2002. That's all I really know. So the winning aspect, not having that really hurts. So, but I would respect anybody who said, what, this is just too far for me. And that is like, and I would hope that anybody that like, if we were to get different owners, anybody who felt like they couldn't watch would understand why people would continue, because it is a big part of a lot of our lives. It'd be very difficult to walk away. Tahir says, I do respect your point of view, George, admirable. And I do too. Like, I think it's important to remember that we all love the club for different reasons, so sometimes it's for a player, and after the player goes, you just don't care anymore either, so good debate, you guys. I think that this could all have been for nothing, but I think we all know where we stand and all of that. And Niall wanted to get a point out there that apparently Moise Kean is the player that Juventus really want. They want a younger striker, so that may foil our plans of Lacazette going. I did see something about Lacazette's been shopped around by our club to like pretty much everybody in Europe, and nobody wants to take him on those wages. So it's going to be a difficult one. Maybe we get a striker and maybe we don't, but we're going to go ahead and end the show there. There's about 200 of you guys watching on all platforms. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, consider becoming a member. Tomorrow I'll be back to do the match preview for Arsenal versus Man City, and I will also be doing the stream with FK. All of the information, I will get that out to you guys as soon as possible. I just to make sure that everything kind of works out. I think 10 p.m. will still be the preview, and we'll do it the live Q&A with FK for members before that. But I will definitely get the information out to you guys and all of that. Oh, we'll see what happens. See you guys later. Bye.